Hi, and welcome to another episode of Better Minneapolis. Today I'm here with congressional candidate Latonya Reeves. Hello.
Hello.
So you're running for office, and you've been quite active in Democratic circles here in the state. Maybe you could just give a little bit of your background.
So I've done a lot of things in terms of the DNC. I'm currently the elected DNC member from Minnesota. I've served on several leadership positions in the DFL, Minneapolis DFL, CD5, the state DFL. And so I've had the opportunity to work my way around the party, learn from everyone, and just be in community. As far as my day job, I'm a probation officer. I do a lot of things around public safety. I'm the current chair of the Community Commission on Police Oversight for Minneapolis. Sentencing Guidelines Commission, I was appointed by Governor Walz in 2023. Worked on some disparity reduction in terms of practices with our sentencing guidelines. Just done many different things in community around public safety and in the community itself.
Okay. And you're also involved with the union, right?
Yes. The current president of Probation and Parole Bargaining Unit for Hennepin County, and so I enjoy working with union members, being in solidarity, fighting for union rights, workers' rights. Yes. Okay. I'm also vice president of Council 5, so I bleed green. Yes.
And so I'm assuming you live in the district, right?
I do. I live in Minneapolis.
I'd like to ask that because, at least in some races, it hasn't always been clear.
Okay.
And you're going for the DFL endorsement, I'm guessing?
Yes.
Okay. And how does that work this year? I know the Minneapolis DFL itself was put on probation, but where does this nomination must happen at the state level, right? Is there a different convention for it?
Yes, there's a congressional district convention for CD5 separately from the Minneapolis DFL, and that will happen sometime in May of next year.
May of next year?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what motivated you to run? What told you this is the right time?
I wanted to run because community was asking. I've been listening to community members for quite some time. I initially wasn't going to jump into the race, but community was saying we need a change. It's time for change in Minneapolis, in CD5 and the surrounding cities. People weren't feeling heard. They're feeling disaffected, disenfranchised, not feeling a part of the party. The Democratic Party has had some issues currently with messaging, and so people just wanted a change. A lot of divisiveness going on in politics right now. We have factions in the party. We have people just not really just working for everyone. And so I'm a collaborator, I'm a bridge builder. I've been dealing with negotiations in terms of contracts for many years. I've done many different things. And so I know I can work with people that don't agree. I know I can work across the aisle, but I also can fight for change. And so I feel like this is a good time for me to step into the race and just kind of show community what I can bring to CD5 and recognize that CD5 has many different cities, many different communities, many different populations of people that just want to be seen and heard, and not just one group monopolizing the conversation. So I'm ready to lead and represent everyone.
Great. Well, let's jump into a few of the platform positions that you're hoping to elevate this time around. There's quite a few on your website, but maybe you could give us the highlights, the top three.
Top three, I would have to say housing, union rights, and public safety. There's many others. Union rights, I want to have working families be able to thrive and not just survive. Currently, we have an administration, a federal administration that wants to burn down our democracy, the Constitution, our union collective bargaining rights, and I want to focus on how do we bring people back to the conversation, focus on working families, the ones that are the backbone of our community, the ones that promote healthy, happy families, that work on services for everyone. We just need people to come back together again and focus on union rights and focus on workers' rights. I would love to see everyone unionized, right? But there is conversations about taking away collective bargaining agreements, saying that people don't have the right to organize, not wanting people to have fair wages. That doesn't make any sense to me. When people have fair wages, they can contribute to the economy, and everyone thrives. When the middle class especially is thriving, everyone thrives. They help support services for those that are not doing as well. We want to uplift everyone, but we know we need a strong middle class, working class to make that happen. Public safety. I think we have a conversation around public safety in the community. It's not necessarily what public safety is to me. When people say public safety, they automatically think of the police. Well, that's not what public safety is. Public safety encompasses everything: housing, income, employment, all the different branches of what we work on in community, because if you can't be safe in one area, it's not necessarily safe in the other. So how do we make sure that we have a fully funded police force? How do we make sure that we have mental health services? How do we make sure that we have alternatives to policing? How do we make sure that people feel safe in their house, their housing? How do we make sure that people feel safe going to work so they can make money, so they can take care of their families? All these different things encompass public safety, and we need to have a better conversation around it. As far as housing and stabilization, as everyone's seen currently in the news right now, we have a lot of issues with our housing stabilization services. There's a lot of fraud. To me, we're not having the right conversation. Democrats really fought for people to get access and to get a leg up. Democrats are fighting for everyone, in my opinion. The problem is our messaging is wrong. Our messaging sucks, quite frankly. We're talking about trying to make sure that everyone gets a leg up, but then we're not talking about people that took advantage of that system. People took advantage of it. A highway full of taking advantage of the system, taking the money, doing whatever they're doing with it. We know taxpayer dollars are going out the door. What do we do to address that? As a probation officer, I feel everyone should be accountable for their actions, but in a fair way. But you have people that took advantage of people trying to help others. So when they do that, what do we do about it, right? The conversation should be, we need to hold you accountable for your actions. You took advantage of the system when we were trying to do services for people. My clients are feeling it. People that are working in the system are feeling it. We can't get clients into housing. Housing stabilization was meant to really stabilize our most marginalized, and they're not being helped right now. Treatment centers are not able to accommodate. Sober housing are not able to accommodate. What happens when we can't accommodate? People go out into the community because they don't have services, and then we all know what happens, right? So we need to be making sure that we account for housing stabilization that makes sense, that people can have housing. Everyone should have housing. We need to do it in a way that makes sense for everyone, and not just for people that don't, or they want to take advantage of the system. It was really disheartening to see that there were so many people that are being harmed by this work, by what has happened in our housing stabilization. So we need to have genuine conversations about how do we fix it. We can't ignore it. We can't act like $1 billion didn't go out the door. But what do we do next? Next steps. And I want to have that conversation. How can we help federally to make sure the state gets what they need to help our most marginalized? So I'm interested in those conversations among many others.
Okay. So I have a couple follow-up questions.
Okay.
That was a lot. So this is a federal position, obviously, and it is sometimes difficult to parse out what is a state issue, what's a federal issue. Going back to the first point you made about living wages and kind of wanting to help working families, how does that happen on a federal level? I mean, I know they've raised the minimum wage here in Minneapolis. So would you be sort of pushing in Congress to raise the federal minimum wage? Or how, if you were elected to this position, do you go about sort of helping to achieve those goals? Is it, elevating the unions? I mean, I'm just wondering a little bit more detail on how you do that in Congress.
We definitely need to raise the federal minimum wage. Minnesota's minimum wage is higher than the federal minimum wage. We also need to be talking to our union partners across this country. We have a lot of public sector unions. We have some private sector unions. We need to make sure that we're talking to everyone to elevate workers' rights. Literally, when the workers do well, everyone does well. We have this top 1% that are billionaires, astronomical amounts of money. And then you have 90% of folks that do not have that much money, but they control how we spend. If they don't make enough money to be able to support themselves, then no one's winning. Those billionaires can continue to say they want to get more money for themselves. But if the middle class and those that buy those goods and services can't afford it, they're not making any money. So we need to raise the minimum wage to make sure that they have what they need to be able to just live and try to work with just one job. Try, right? Everything is so expensive, so that's hard to do nowadays. But at least not have to have 4 jobs to be able to afford to pay their rent. Working with the unions, collective bargaining agreements, making sure that people are stabilized in that way will go a long way to increasing workers' rights in this country.
And so to pay for stuff like that, are you looking to change the tax code at all? I mean, I know other Congress people have wanted to raise the tax on that 1% that you were mentioning. Do you have any thoughts on that?
They absolutely have to pay more. They have to pay more. To me, if you are blessed enough to be able to make millions and billions of dollars, you need to give back. I firmly believe that. You have the capacity to do so. You need to be paying fair wages. If someone makes $1 billion, what's paying $10 million more to their employees to make sure they have what they need, right? So I think that we have a class of folks in this country that want to do and have more money. I honestly don't care how much money you make. I really don't care. What I care is what you do with it. If you are blessed to make that much money, then you need to bring it down to the families that are making you that much money. Bring it back to the workers that are allowing you to be on yachts and everything else, right? Fair share. And so I would definitely advocate for increase on those workers, on those billionaires who are making. I think of Elon Musk. I think he said he's going to be a trillionaire.
Yeah, he
I don't
got
even
a
think that's
pretty nice pay package.
humanly possible.
So another one of the points you brought up there was housing, and I believe they're kind of expecting us to see some federal housing funds cut in the state.
Yes.
So, it's certainly a frustration, I think, of Democrats in Congress right now, that it seems like they don't have the ability to stop these things as much as they would like to. So how do you foresee yourself kind of increasing the federal funds for housing and working, I guess, with Republicans to make sure that these programs continue?
Red states in particular utilize a lot of these services. And if we stop trying to put politics into the conversation and we really talk about who is being harmed by these policies, Republicans need to come to the table, have a conversation, work across the aisle, because a lot of their constituents are the ones that are suffering the most from these housing shortages. So we need to make sure that we're funding it. We tax people that make a lot of money to fund it. A human right, people should have somewhere to live. I can tell you that the clients I've worked with over the years, if they're housed, they do much better in their outcomes. Housing stabilization needs to be funded, fully funded, and then we need to make sure that we're working across the aisle because, again, their constituents are the ones that utilize the services just as much as everyone else, if not more. So why would you not want to do what's best for your constituents? And that's getting into housing.
And do you think of housing in terms of like subsidies to help people pay rent, or do you think of housing in terms of, say, like the government actually builds facilities where people live? Like, how do you?
I think it's both.
Okay.
So those that need subsidies to be able to afford housing, we make sure they have that. But those that have the capacity to be able to buy, we need to have more programs into buying. We need to take care of predatory landlords. There's ways that we can look at housing as opposed to just saying one way or the other. Predatory landlords are an issue. We know that. Subsidies, we need to make sure that they are used properly. And then we need to build homes so people can have that American dream that people talk about, right? So many people don't have access to being able to buy a home. I just read recently that the median age to buy a home is 39. That's the highest it's ever been in my entire life. We need to make sure that people can get that American dream, that they can buy a home with their families and then build generational wealth, which people have been shut out, in particular people of color, for many, many years, to be able to build generational wealth. So we need to find ways to make that a priority, as well as subsidized housing, as well as subsidies in wherever they need to be in terms of making sure people have housing.
Okay. And in terms of public safety, I think right now the big issue is what we see in the papers, where ICE are in the state. Like they just invaded a place in St. Paul, right? And there was a big protest. What's your role? What's a congressperson's role in, because I don't think most people think of that as public safety, right? So what should they expect out of you in terms of pushing back on these type of federal forces in the state? And then, what sort of public safety programs are you looking to fund or promote?
For sure, we cannot have people being kidnapped off the street, and that's what we see happening. regardless of whatever people think is going on, people should not be kidnapped. We need due process. And the congressperson's potential job is to make sure that the federal agencies are doing their job. As far as programs for public safety, we need to have more youth programming. We need to have ways that people can get access to after-school programming. When I was younger, I was able to go into the Boys and Girls Club and go to different things and get access. Some of these kids don't have that nowadays, so we need to be able to divert. But when it comes down to ICE itself and what happened in St. Paul, the details are still coming out. But for sure, they said many people were arrested. There was tear gas, slamming people on the street. All of that is unnecessary. If you were there to do a search, then you do a search. If you're there to try to see if people were illegally there, treat people with dignity and respect. Don't just kidnap them off the street because of their skin color or you think that they might be someone that is doing something wrong. Give them the process that you would want for yourself, for your family, for your children. That's all it needs to happen, is treat people with respect. If someone's doing wrong, you take care of it. But if they're not, and they're exercising their right to film you, or they're exercising their right to say, what are you doing, and asking you questions, the response should not be so adversarial. And I think that's where we've gotten in this conversation, is adversarial.
So speaking of that, you mentioned just about messaging and how the DFL has got it wrong. You're part of the DNC. What do you think the messaging needs to change to that they're not doing right now?
We need to be talking about what is actually going on at people's kitchen table. The fact that they can't afford their rent, they can't afford food on their table, they don't particularly care what the stock market looks like today. They don't. If they can't even go to the store to buy dinner for their children, they don't care if the Dow Jones is up 700 points, right? So we need a message. We also need to be talking about the bills that were passed in the last couple of years when Biden was in office were astronomical to helping American families. We need to break it down in terms of the messaging of what that is. People may not understand the Insurrection Act, right? They may not understand different things that were passed at the legislative level, but we can say, you know what? Were you able to do this? Were you able, the infrastructure bill, it helped you do this? Were you able to go and see projects coming up? Were your roads fixed today? Them big potholes that you've been seeing for 2 years, were they fixed? Did the bridge that you see that kind of wobbly, you thought it looked kind of wobbly, did it look like it was being repaired? Those things happen because of this. We got to break it down so people can understand what actually was the benefit of some of these legislative acts that were passed. I think we get too technical in our language, and people are they're just not seeing what we believe is actually going on. What we see at the DNC saying, we have really good changes going on. We have people working together. We have really good candidates coming on board. But what are they actually doing? How are they getting our message across about what the Democrats are doing? Why we are the better party for working families. I do truly believe that we are the best party for working families. I know some people in the community don't believe that. How do we get them to understand that we truly are?
Yeah, it seems like I think maybe some working families feel like the Democrats have been focused on other things, right? And I don't know that I've seen signs that the Democrats are changing, that they're kind of gotten the message, if you will. Although I know they talk about affordability a lot. That's become sort of the catchphrase, but I don't know where they are going to push buttons to say lowering the price of groceries, things like that. Is that something they're just going to kind of keep talking about, or do you think that they have actual bills that they need to be pushing to help with the cost of groceries and things like that? Because obviously here in the state, farming is a big business. So how do you actually go about helping to have people see reduced costs on their kitchen tables and things?
So yes, we definitely want to support our farmers. I think one of the things that we need to be talking about is small business, right? Small business are what support communities. The more small businesses that we have and they're thriving, the less costs that are borne on the property tax owners and the renters. We've seen a push in community to not be as supportive, in my opinion, of small business. And that has led to increased costs. Businesses leaving Minneapolis, for example, at high rates. If you look over on Hennepin Avenue, you see what's going on. A lot of those businesses left Uptown, for example, ghost town in comparison to what it was before. So how do we get small businesses to come back in, invest in community, and lower those property taxes for homeowners so that they can then turn around and buy those goods and services that they need. We need to support the middle class, and by that, supporting small business, supporting community, lowering the cost of living just by property taxes alone. If you could take a burden of hundreds of dollars off a year of someone's property taxes, they can then do other things and contribute to the economy. Well, we need to make that possible. We need legislation at the federal level that really addresses some of these price gouging that we see going on. We need people that are going to be brave enough to say, let's try to pass a bill. Let's introduce a bill to do these things. We don't need to say, oh, we don't have the will to do that. And that's what I see a lot of Democrats doing. They're playing it safe. We can't play it safe when we have a federal administration that literally wants to burn down everything. We have to find ways to work together, but be bold, be brave, introduce legislation. I was talking to someone about, I'm going to just pivot a little bit in terms of our current president. 34 felony convictions. Whatever people think about the convictions, they're there for now, all right? So I said we should introduce a bill, me being a probation officer, that says that those folks that have felonies should be able to get employment as long as the felony is not in relation to the job, right? I said just to introduce it to see what happens. They voted for a 34 convicted felon president. Let's see what happens. But there was no will to have that conversation. Well, why? Even if it didn't pass, force the Republicans to tell you they don't want people to work. Force the Republicans to say, you know what, we don't want felons to have jobs. Your president is a felon, right? Yeah. So I just think we need to push the envelope and have those hard conversations and then work across the aisle when we can and fight when we can't, in terms of fight for the rights of CD5 in particular. What are they not getting for their services? And I need to make sure that I fight for those.
So in terms of sort of big ideas and pushing the envelope, where do you feel like the Democratic Party needs to go on health care? That's one of the affordable health care for all Americans is one of your platform pieces. And I know it's a big topic, but the state is looking at, Medicaid cuts and at least on the Senate side, those candidates, the Democratic candidates, have some very different ideas about how you go about it. So what are your thoughts? What would you like to see the Democratic Party put forward for health care?
I know there are conversations around universal health care. I think ultimately we should get to universal health care. It's the one thing that we need to have. We have people not going to the doctor because they literally can't afford it. But in the meantime, until we can get universal health care, we need to find a way to reduce the costs and have affordable health care for people. When we talk about people being able to go to the doctor, I don't want their first touch point to be the emergency room, because that costs more money for everyone. So how do we help folks to be able to afford to go and see a primary care doctor with less barriers in terms of copays, so they can be healthier and not wait till something catastrophic is wrong, which then costs much more money, right? So we need to find ways to reduce the costs. We have insurance providers, we have drug providers that increase the cost of these drugs astronomically, when you literally can go to Canada or to Mexico and get a fraction of the cost for the same medicine. We need to figure out why. Is it because they want to promote these billionaires getting more and more money, pharmaceutical companies, or are we really going to say we need to reduce costs for Americans? If they have to spend most of their money on medical costs, they can't spend money elsewhere.
Right. Well, I think I saw that one of Ilhan Omar's ideas is to try and cap, even with private companies, insulin at $35. I don't know if that really goes that far to changing the system as a whole, or if we get towards universal health care that way. But I think maybe Angie Craig is also in support of more Medicare, being able to negotiate the price of drugs. Is that sort of one of the areas you'd be looking at? Or
Absolutely. We need to find a way to bring costs down, and that goes through negotiation, right? How can we really reduce the cost of these medications so that people can use it? How sad is it when you have someone that cannot go and get insulin and they pass away because they could not afford the astronomical cost of insulin? Asthma medication, grown people dying because they're rationing their asthma medication. That should not be. It truly, in the most richest country in the world, the most industrialized country in the world, people are dying because they can't use enough of their asthma spray.
Yeah.
It just cannot continue to happen.
You talked about fraud there, and a lot of that happened on the state level, right? And Medicaid flows into the state, and the state department here in Minnesota, I think, is the Health and Human Services Department, then administers all these different programs and stuff. How, in your role, would you help with that? I don't know if you've spoken to Governor Walz or any of the people in the education department, but I'm just wondering what you see yourself being able to do in terms of watchdogging or pushing different programs to prevent fraud.
In Congress, you really don't have a role in terms of state, in terms of how they spend their money, other than making sure they have the resources to spend it. But it can't just be, let's figure out a way to get more resources from the federal government to come into the state for housing stabilization, for example. But then the money's going out the door in terms of fraud. So we need to figure out something, right? So yes, we can advocate for money at the federal level to make sure money comes into the state. But then we have to deal with the fraud. And so the conversation would look like, what are you guys doing to address this? We can ask for it here, but if we can't address it here, then what's the point? We need to figure out this first. Taxpayer dollars need to be appropriately spent on the service that people need. We need to be providing these services, but we need to spend it appropriately because the taxpayers put trust to make sure it's done. And again, I do believe the Democrats were getting the money out the door to help as many people as possible. Unfortunately, people took advantage of that system, and now we have to figure out how to address it. On this level, we just look at how do we fund it? How can we support you in the work that you're looking to do at the state level?
So really it's kind of using the bully pulpit, if you will, to bring attention to it a little bit. Okay.
That's one way, yes. Mm-hmm.
And do you think Democrats have defined their position on immigration well, or how would you define it? I mean, obviously pushing back against these ICE raids, but then what's the overall vision for that you support for immigration? I mean, should it be limited? Should there just be open borders? Do you have ideas around that?
I think we can make sure that we protect our border, but also make sure that those folks that need to come into the country because there's running from whatever's going on in their home country seeking asylum, they should have the right to do so. People should be able to do it the legal way. I mean, literally, you have people being arrested at their court appearances. Yeah. They're doing it the legal way, and obviously that's not good enough, right? So we need to stop talking about we want people to do it legally, but when they try to, you arrest them anyway, right? So we need to just have respectful processes for our immigration. Stop calling it illegal, right? People are coming here to this country. You have some that are going to abuse every system, right? But people are trying to come here for a reason. And I wouldn't want to be the person to say, you can't come here even though you're being persecuted from your home country. We have a responsibility as a country that's doing very well to protect people and help those in need. And so if there's issues going on in their home country and they're coming here, and I can't imagine it's easy to come here. Some of the stories you've seen on the news, coming through water, barbed wire, some of their family members passing away getting here. There's a reason why they're trying to get here if they're going through all that to get here. And we want to support those that want to come here and go through our processes and do it the right way. But we have to also understand that we need to figure out why they're coming here and not just saying you can't come here. I just find that this doesn't go against my faith. Yeah. Yep.
So a couple of final questions, sort of traditional issues that are assigned to the Democratic Party. One is access to health care for women, particularly for abortions. What's your thinking on that? Is that something that needs to be relitigated in the courts? Do we need a national law? Do we just protect state law? How do we handle it? I'm assuming here that this is something you support.
Yes. There is no person that should tell any other person what to do with their body. It's woefully inappropriate. Mm-hmm. I can't walk up to you and tell you, you know what, today I think you need to do it the way I want you to do it. People need to mind their business, let people live their lives, and take care of themselves the way they need to take care of them. If they need help, they should ask for it. But telling a woman that she can't go have an abortion, that abortion is not health care, you don't have the right to tell a woman that, in my opinion. You need to help her get what she needs. You have women, you've heard on the news, you heard at the DNC National Convention about the young lady in Atlanta. She passed away because she could not get the services that she needed, and they put more value on her unborn child than her. If that was a situation that was reversed, and that was their loved one, would it be the same? I do not think it's appropriate for anyone to tell a woman what to do with her body. Her body is her own, regardless of whatever someone believes about their personal belief in their faith. That is for you to determine, not to put that on someone else, right? I've always tell people, for me, it may not be the right decision for me, but I can't tell someone else what to do with their body, and I never would, right? You make the decision for you. If abortion is health care, this nonsense about people taking abortions in the 9th month, I don't know anyone that gets 9 months pregnant and then decides, you know what, I don't want the baby.
Yeah, they come up with some crazy.
Instead of just saying it's probably just a medical issue and they can't have the baby, right? And so we need to have some compassion around this, some sympathy for these women that are going through this. And it's not the time to tell them they can't have services because you don't think they should be able to have it.
So another issue that's come up recently, particularly in this state, is this Title IX decision and sort of this battle over whether or not transgender people should be able to decide essentially what sports teams they play for. Where do you stand on transgender rights, and would you be supporting sort of, them playing in their sport of choice or not, or where do you stand on that? Because I do think there's a huge community of people here in Minnesota that, in your district, that care a great deal about this.
I think people should be able to play sports. I don't see anyone creating a separate league for these folks to be able to play sports and telling them they shouldn't be able to. People would have a fit if they were watching an NBA game and saw a female presenting person running up and down the court in a male game. They would have a fit, right? I think people are so worried about how people can show up. Let them show up the way they want to show up. If they've taken the steps to be who they want to be and who they believe themselves to be, let them be them. If that means playing sports, let them play sports. If it becomes an issue, they can address it at that time, but let them play sports. I don't never want a kid to be able to say, you know what, the system told you can't play sports because you choose to be who you are. These are kids. They just want to play sports up until whatever age. Let them be them.
Okay. So are there any other topics that you wanted to cover today that we haven't had a chance to talk about? I mean, you've got some pretty big endorsements on your side. I think I saw Keith Ellison. You've got the mayor.
So no, I worked on my DNC site. That was a previous site. But what I will say though is I definitely had a lot of community support. I appreciate the community members that came and asked me to run. I look forward to working for a community. I look forward to being their representative. I look forward to being a representative for everyone, not just some, right? I tell people all the time, even if I don't agree with you, I can represent you. Even if I don't agree on every issue and every topic, everyone has value. Everyone should be seen. Everyone should be heard, and I'm the representative to do that.
And so obviously we have an incumbent who's running again. Are there parts of the community you feel like are not being heard right now with her? Or okay.
Yes. Yep. There's community members that are not feeling heard, and we need to take personal agendas out of the conversation. The community should be driving what we're doing at this national level. What are the issues most important to community? What are the issues that they want to talk about in terms of their kitchen table issues? We oftentimes are seeing too many politicians focus on other things as opposed to what the district wants or what the constituents want. And we need to change the focus back to the constituents because it's their representative in that seat, not just me.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you so much for coming in and introducing yourself to everyone, and I wish you the best of luck out there.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
All right.
Have a good day. Thank you.